yes, monarch no, they are terrorists, they must go.
Iran, yes, monarch no, they are terrorists, they must go.
Iran, yes, monarch no, they are terrorists, they must go.
Republic of Islamic Republic, Diplomat.
Republic of Islamic Republic, Islam.
Republic of Islamic Republic, Diplomat.
As we can see, uh, as you can see, there are some Iranian protests going on, and I am absolutely baffled as so many people are just are falling for what seems to be a load of propaganda. Now, I'm not defending the Iranian regime. Nobody can defend the Iranian regime. I do not care if it falls or stands. But what is very, very laughable about all this, that we as British people, as Westerners, we're supposed to go along with this notion that freedom loving people actually want to do away with their Islamic regime and replace it with a monarchy. How does that even make sense? All right, DC, how you doing?
Hello, mate. Yeah, nice to see you. Yeah, I think the thing is with Iran is the last time the country was sane and happy, where they had freedom, democracy, no Islam, only pockets of Islam, they had a king, and it was the father of the, the crown prince. So I think in their head, if they can go back to before the 70s, when this guy's father was the king, that's how life will be. I don't think it's going to work out that way, but I can see why, in a time of stress, that's what they would think. So I think that's the reasoning behind wanting a king.
So you're trying to tell me that the people have not advanced enough to come to a sane realization that it wasn't actually the monarchy that was controlling, it was the actual culture, it was the people. So why would they swap one type of dictatorship for another, is what I'm just trying to ask.
Well, you said it yourself. You said, I can't believe how many people have eaten up so much propaganda. And that's all they've had since the 70s. They've had nothing but propaganda, bullying police and murdering government officials in the name of Islam. They've all been forced to wear veils and pray 5 times a day, all the rest of it. So in their head, it's a step forward to go back to the 70s before that was a thing. I think after that, they probably want elections and they'll want someone who's going to stick up for that election process being a thing. That's the king in their eyes. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I just think that's how they got there.
So how does that differ to the issue we have in Britain? Are you a monarchist or are you not a monarchist? What's your position?
I have a king. that's I suppose in a way I'm a monarchist, but my king is Jesus Christ. So it's not a human king. It's not someone who we could put on the throne here. It's a guy who's going to take the throne when the time comes. But I'm a monarchist in terms of Christianity, yes.
Okay, well, that's a bit of an advanced answer to a question that was firmly based in materialism and this country. So I was really referring to the British monarchy. So,
do I support the king who's potentially a Muslim? Absolutely not. No, I've never been a fan. I didn't mind Queen Elizabeth. I mean, I wasn't a monarchist back then, but I didn't not like her. But I mean, since then, I've heard and seen nothing good. So no, I don't like the current monarchy of Britain, no.
So do you find it strange that people who are supposed to be conservative, pro-democratic and pro-constitution also are very favourable of the monarchy? Do you not find that strange?
I'd have to really have an in-depth conversation with them about that, as to how they got to there. How they got there in the first place. As far as I can see, even if you have a really good, solid, moral Christian king who does everything you want, his children cannot be relied upon to be that same way. And it's nepotism, so you don't get to choose the next king. So it's one of those, it's like you're always looking to the next one and worrying, what are they going to do? So, I think the people who are monarchists maybe just are idealists. They think every monarchist, every leader they get, every king they get is going to be this great person. and it just never works out that way.
And do you buy into the notion that the British royal family bring in so much revenue from tourism? Do you think that's a positive, and B, do you think it is as important as the government makes out?
Perhaps if I could see it being spent in my local community, I would. But as far as I can tell, no, they don't do anything. I never see anything that has a royal stamp of approval on it that was paid for by the royal family. All I see is the royal family sticking up for the enemies of this country, really, and not getting involved in things you would expect them to. So I'm
Yeah.
very suspicious of the royal family here, truth be told.
Yeah, you're making some good points actually. So in the UK, so we have a constitutional monarchy, which is a freeway system. The constitution protects the people. The monarch is supposed to uphold the constitution, and then the people will allow the monarchy to exist, providing that it protects the constitution. So we can both agree that the monarchy has not protected the constitution, is not protecting it, and as a consequence, from a third position, is attacking the people. So, if the monarchy goes, does that not also mean that the constitution, as we know it, won't exist?
Well, recently there's been a lot of talk about this company Palantir, which is an AI-driven American military corporation. And the CEO of this company actually said the other day, free speech and democracy, they cannot any longer exist together. One of them has got to go. And I knew exactly what he meant. He wants to get rid of democracy. So, I mean, what they're probably going to say is the end of democracy is because of the end of the monarchy. You know, they try and wangle it, so that's how it looks. But as much as I hate that Palantir guy, you know, his mass murdering psycho and his military company, he's right. Democracy has now let in so many people that want to get rid of it. That's how they're going to vote. And the king is going to allow it. So he is going to be instrumental in that happening. But I mean, this is going back to the Iran thing. This is why Iran want to go back to their king, because the last king they had was a democracy guy. You know, he did safeguard their democracy. And as soon as he got, you know, they got rid of him, the Islamists took over. So it's a different world now. I think monarchy today doesn't mean the same thing as it did in the 70s. And we just need to be aware of that. You know, we're not going to have another Queen Elizabeth II. That's not going to happen again. So, you know, the embers of our democracy, if we want to protect our rights and some form of democracy, I don't think a monarchy is the way to do that. I think a monarchy will actually be a problem for that.
So do you think this Iranian so-called crown prince is supported by Israel, and that there's an early agreement between the two parties that he will become the monarch once they topple the regime, and he will support Israel going forward?
Well, he's declared himself a Zionist, and he said he supports Israel's current borders, you know, not the 1967 or the ones the Muslim wants. And in return for that support, Israel have said they will support him and see him as an allied leader, if you like. So something did go on there, and I'm a bit suspicious of that, if I'm honest. But do I think that Reza Pahlavi is going to be the savior of Iran? In the short term, maybe. In the long term, no, I don't.
So where is this demo taking place? Is it outside the Iranian embassy or something? Do you know?
Oh, I have no idea. It probably is, probably outside the building or somewhere close. But I mean, because of the internet, I think these guys know if they have enough numbers, it doesn't matter where they go. You know, they can get millions of views online, and that's like a propaganda tool, isn't it? So it probably is somewhere like that. But I mean, it wouldn't really matter if it wasn't. I think the instrumental thing is it's just showing that there is a huge public support against the IRGC. And that's blended in with Reza Pahlavi being the king. So they've combined those two things. It's almost like you can't say you support a free Iran unless you support the king or the crown prince.
Uh-huh. And what about over in America? What are your thoughts with what's been happening in America? Because it looks like whoever controls the left-wing politics there is trying to start a internal, maybe not a civil war, but some kind of civil unrest especially around the ICE operations. What are your thoughts with that? Do you think the Trump administration are going about doing that in the right way?
I'm going to be extremely unpopular now you've asked me that, Manny. Right, so I think ICE officers are law enforcement officers. And I think if the law is going to be followed, it needs enforcement by those officers. So anyone who drives a car at them, shoots at them, resists them openly, should have the law applied. And if that means, dragging them out of cars, putting them in cuffs, taserings, or, shooting them if they've posed a threat to human life, 100% I would agree with that. And I go far as saying most of the opposition is paid, lefties who are too stupid to know, but that's the reason they're getting paid and supported on these protests, or it's actual illegal immigrants and spies of China and people like that. I don't think many real Americans have anything against ICE whatsoever. Just the media will, like you say, are trying to paint it that way for their left supporting politicians.
So, sorry, just clarify on that. So, are you pro the ICE agents doing that, and how far is what ICE agents are doing? And I'm just kind of recycling a question that's coming from the left in America. So, how different is this from the Gestapo doing what they were doing? Right, and now I know the obvious answer to that, but we have to remember, whether we like it or not, that there is a significant number of people in America that stand against what ICE are doing. So does that not have to be taken into consideration, that there is such opposition?
Well, I compare it to here. I think if we had Gaza protesters, rabid, angry Muslims out in their hundreds of thousands on the street, causing, all kinds of crime and mischief, attacking law officers, and the police had lost control of it, would I be asking the military here to be rolled out or some kind of ICE enforcement here? Absolutely. I would not feel safe until that had happened. And I certainly wouldn't be getting in the way of these guys. I'd let them get on with their job, make the street safe again. Then I would probably come out again. But I mean, it's such a large country. They've got 50 states with different populations, different rules, all federally supported, of course. And I think that's where the problem comes in, is some of these states have politicians, i.e. Mamdani, who always were against the Trump government. And no matter what they do, they're going to rile up the left, and they're going to use this paid opposition as a tool to try and get him out. That's democracy. This guy got voted in for those ideals. And as far as I can see, that's going to be his mission while he's in there. So if it takes a military force to remove him and his ideological nutters who support him, if that's the only way to do it, then I guess I would say I do support it. But nobody wants to see people being shot and jailed when they're protesting. It's just because those protests do happen to contain a large number of criminals, people who have no respect for others or the law. So it's a difficult one. I do kind of support it.
Before we move on to the shooting, and I've got a question about that. But you do understand the opinion of the left when it comes to ICE, right? They are saying that there's enough wealth in the country to help immigrants have a better life, and therefore we should not be so evil in order to send them back to a lesser life, if you like. Now, of course, we know that the right argument is, well, they don't like the country, they don't like the culture, and they're, a lot of them are, or many of them are committing crimes and that type of thing. But we know that they are not removing just criminals. They are removing law-abiding citizens, be it that they were there illegally. So can you see from the left-wing perspective, whether or not we agree with it, that there is some level of goodness in their opinion?
You put me on the spot there. Probably not. I mean, it's wealth distribution. It's a step towards communism, and I don't like that. I mean, for instance, you have like 4 or 5 properties. Would you be willing to surrender one of your properties in full to the government to house good, quote unquote, good illegal immigrants? Because I don't have a wealth to give them. My wealth is mine. It's for me and my family and the people I choose to support. Would you be willing to give 1/5 of your wealth away to a bunch of random immigrants who the government had labelled as quote unquote good?
No, because we know that the government is not picking actually good people that are genuinely running from a dire situation. So what the government says is actually true, and what is actually true are two very different things many times. I'm not saying the government always does everything wrong. I'm not
just this one. Just this current government do everything wrong. Absolutely.
No, yeah, I mean, it's terrible. Keir Starmer and his
David
bosses
Lammy,
and the government are very they're very anti-British people. We can conclude on that. It's very dangerous, and within 4 or 5 years he's going to completely destroy the country. And what people forget is that all the other pretenders to the throne, so to speak, whether it's Farage or Ben Habib and everything, they're not talking about reversing any of the actual laws that matter. All they're doing is piggybacking on what people talk about the most, which is illegal immigration, and they're not giving any assurances that they will deliver what they say do anyway. So I don't think people even... I'm not saying that the country can't go back to how it should be. I'm just saying that unfortunately the people who can educate the people on how to think about things are not doing that. They too are emotionally reacting. But anyway, I'm digressing. Sorry, what were we talking about? We were talking about Keir Starmer and his government and messing the
you
country
were saying
up.
Do I agree with this ICE campaign to get rid of everyone who came into the country illegally, whether they've got a job and been, potentially good people or not? And I said probably no, and gave the example that if it was here, would you give one of your properties away so you no longer had any ownership of it to house immigrants?
That's not a relevant question. That's not a relevant question
to me, because if you're talking about distributing my wealth without me having a say in it, like I say, it's a step towards communism. I'm quite, capable of choosing where my charity money goes, and I do that. Everyone who knows me knows I do a lot of charity work. I don't want that in the hands of someone else, and I don't want it in the hands of an elected official who's going to change every 4 years or every year. So in that situation, I would always say no. It's not that I've got anything against illegal immigrants who want to work. I like these guys just as well as anyone else. But it's not my responsibility to give away 20% of what I've earned over my life to potentially house them and set them up when I don't know for sure whether they're going to be a net gain or whether they're going to be sending that money home to fund terrorism. I just have no idea. So I'd say no just on that.
Okay. All right, fair enough. I agree with a lot of what you said there. So let's talk about that shooting, the ICE shooting. I think it was in New York or wherever it was.
Nicole Nicole Good. That's the one.
Now, we saw the video. We saw that she tried to get away from the situation. Her tires were pointing somewhat away from the officer in front. She may have been a little bit bullish. There were armed men, be it officers of the law or ICE agents surrounding the car with weapons. So we have to understand there's going to be some level of intimidation. And as she drove away, he did let off, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, 3 bullets. So he shot her 3 times in the face. I can understand that he may have been intimidated himself, but why he was standing there where that could have happened is one thing, but most importantly, it is firing 3 bullets at that range in that situation a bit OTT.
I don't know enough about it. From what I could glean, and using news sources online, ChatGPT and such, she was in the road trying to interrupt an arrest from another ICE agent. That's why they're in the road. The guy who they were trying to arrest had run into the road. And as the ICE agents were trying to put this guy in cuffs, she revved her car up and then made out like she was going to run into them. So they had to let go of him. And then she drove past and sped away. So under the current law of America, if you interrupt an arrest like that, that's a Class B felony, and then absconding from the scene. So they were well within their rights to shoot at her. But considering the car was facing the other way, I find it hard to believe that he was even aiming at the head, because it's the smallest, most difficult thing to aim at. Probably was aiming at the the car, firing 3 bullets, and she actually did survive for some hours. You know, she turned up at hospital and later died later that day. So I don't know whether she was shot in the face 3 times. You'd expect someone to die pretty soon after and not make it to a hospital later the day. But I mean, under the terms of the law, she either didn't know the law well enough to know that was going to be the case, and that's why she didn't go to the hospital straight away, or she was actually belligerent and they've just covered it with this propaganda. So I don't know enough to say it, but I'm inclined to say, even though it's unpopular, because she did rev her car and, you know, simulate running over an officer, interrupting a rightful, lawful arrest, then absconded. Bearing in mind, last week, a guy drove a truck through a bunch of Iran protesters, injuring like 40 people. The police probably had that in mind, or the ICE agents probably had that in mind and thought, right, we need to take this one down. Not like they meant to kill her. You know, like I say, if a car's driving away from you at speed and you're using a pistol, which is not the most useful of weapons, it's very difficult to hit things with a pistol, I would think he shot towards the car slightly up so that a stray bullet didn't hit anyone, and that's probably how she ended up getting hit. But had she not done
I understand what you're saying, but I think what you're saying is also dangerous because she didn't draw a weapon as if she was going to shoot.
Her car was a weapon.
So their life wasn't immediately in danger. The officer
I don't know
voluntarily came and stood in front of the car. He could have very much moved out of the way, and there was no indication or no information that I've come across that states that she was likely to be driving through a crowd of people, and she definitely wasn't Muslim, obviously, so that reduces the chance massively. So I just think that when this whole officers protecting themselves and others is implemented, that is not the scenario that we should be looking at, where an officer has a right, whether he's done it legally or not legally. That is not the type of scenario I think that the officer should have a right to shoot to kill.
Well, I mean, like I say, I don't really know enough. Like what I've heard about her driving away, I can't confirm that. I've not seen footage of it, and that's the official story. But then you've got protesters saying the opposite thing. You know, we know neither side is 100% honest, so it's tough to really say. But I mean, if I was that ICE officer and I had been trained, if someone absconds from a Class B felony to try and take them down, which is what the law says, that is a lawful action. I was trained to do that. I'm employed to do that. You know, I'm going to be in trouble if I don't do that. Would I, in the spur of the moment, have done that? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, these guys are experts at weapon control. They get all that training. I'm not. I've never shot a real gun. And even I know a pistol at that range in a moving target hitting a tiny little area like a head, virtually impossible shots. You're going to fire more than once. And even after 3 shots, you're probably going to miss. And then there's stray bullets. So I don't know. I might not. It depends on the particulars. But I mean, it's an example, you know, it's like an exception, isn't it? I don't think the law needs a sea change just on the back of that one thing. Really, what they need is I suppose, a review of the law on how to treat protesters who are premeditated in that way. You know, they bring their car along as a weapon. They've got people there with cameras. They're trained in what they're going to do, how they're going to get away. And nobody's going to help out law enforcement. So they've got one opportunity to apprehend you or stop you, then you're gone. They never see you again. So maybe it's the training that is at fault here, not the individual. I don't know, but that's what I would think.
Okay, I'm going to play as a video.
Please go and check on your elderly neighbours. I've just been to see my neighbour Jean. She's 82. And she's freezing. She's scared. She hasn't put her heating on, and it's fucking -2. I'm so sorry. She hasn't used the heating properly in weeks because she's scared. She can't afford it. She lost her husband a few months ago, and she's just not taking care of herself at all. I've told she's coming round here for a tea. I mean, I know it's 4:15, but she's coming round here for a tea and a warm because I've got my heat on. I just feel so sad because she's sat in her house with a blanket on. She's worried that she can't use the heating because she can't afford it. What the fuck has this country come to?
That national renewal.
So, what do you think of that, mate? That poor lady is so, is not prosperous enough to pay for her heating. I mean, that was a heartbreaking video, don't you think?
Extremely sad, absolutely just heartbreaking. And I'm a great person to speak about this because I also do not use my heating. I haven't switched my heating on, apart from to have a shower. It's the only reason I use it. In 3 years, something like that, and it was a very cold winter just gone. So, I mean, I'm not a pensioner. I'm getting there, but I'm not quite there. So what I find is it is too expensive to use heating, especially during the cold month when you're leaving it on for hours at a time. And what I tend to do is have lots and lots of layers of clothing. I have dressing gowns, I have hats, even gloves sometimes that I wear indoors. And I'm absolutely protesting the price of electricity. But what we need to keep in mind is the reason that electricity is so high in cost now is because of the support that the lefties have previously given to green policy penalties, penalties for not using green energy. And we were told it was going to happen, and it did happen, that made the price of energy skyrocket. Then we were relying on Russian oil. Now Russia isn't selling us cheap oil anymore. We're getting ripped off. So it's not something that can be solved overnight. And I feel like this woman's got the right approach. Invite the lady over, give her a heated room and a meal. But the problem persists when she goes home. So this is something which this country needs to get to grips with. And I do feel like we're going to see, unfortunately, this winter, if it's as bad, a lot of people passing away, freezing to death or starving. It's exactly why I do the charity work that I do. I only give out food and I pay for heating and roofs overheads and stuff like that. There's nothing else that I will put money towards than that at the moment. No animals, donkey saving or, gars and food packets, none of that. It's all in this country or neighbouring countries, food and heating for the elderly. And it's because there's no other way that they're going to pay for that. I'm
happy to pay towards that elderly lady's heating. Nobody's supposed to be living like that. And I think it's terrible. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people that will happily do that as well. I don't know where that video is from, but I think there's a TikTok thing there. Maybe we'll have a look at that later. The thing is, I mean, the tax money is being paid to house illegal immigrants who go on to commit crimes against us, and that's millions upon millions an hour, let alone a day. And that should be going towards looking after the elderly, especially someone like that. So it is heartbreaking, and well done you if you're kind of doing work in regards to this. Another video for you, something that I've been telling people about for years and years, but hopefully they'll start listening about this now.
Hopefully.
Keir Starmer's odious government has been forced to back down on digital ID. They're still greasing the skids for banning X, but if anything, this one is even more terrifying. Under the terms of the onerous Online Safety Act, the UK government within just a few months will be able to access every single private message you've sent on your smartphone and then potentially initiate criminal proceedings against you if you're deemed to have flouted the country's draconian hate speech laws, potentially leading to arrest and prison time. Let me spell it out clearly. This isn't about you posting a spicy meme on X or writing "Stop the Boats" on Facebook. They'll already arrest you for that. This is about spying on personal messages you share with friends and family on WhatsApp or iMessage, monitoring them for potential subversive intent or offensive language, and then locking you up in a cage for it. Section 121 of this Orwellian Act grants Ofcom the power to compel messaging platforms like WhatsApp and iMessage to deploy accredited technology for scanning messages sent with end-to-end encryption. Of course, as with just about anything related to the Online Safety Act, it's going to be sold on the premise of stopping child exploitation, criminal networks and terrorism. But make no mistake, right, Zia Yusuf, this is client-side scanning. Messages will be analysed on your device before encryption, meaning true end-to-end privacy evaporates. Every text, photo or voice note you send could be inspected in real time, not just flagged ones, but all of them. Adding that the government has instructed Ofcom to begin using these powers by April this year. These are the people who who run Ofcom, by the way. The legislation makes clear the spy system will only be used to monitor CSEA and terrorist content. Okay, fair enough, you might think. But wait a second. What do UK authorities consider to be terrorist content? Believing that mass migration is making Britain demographically less white British. You think I'm joking? Well, you must not have played the government's new anti-terror pathways video game, which is being used in schools to supposedly stop the radicalisation of teenagers, where kids are at risk of being referred to the government's anti-terror prevent programme. If they believe Muslim men are stealing the places of British veterans in emergency accommodation, manifestly true, or that the government is betraying white British people and we need to take back control of our country, manifestly true, even researching immigration statistics online, defending English rights, or joining a protest against the changes that Britain has been through in the last few years and the erosion of British values, all being treated as a potential sign of terrorist radicalisation.
It's important to remember that downloading or streaming certain content can lead to a terrorist offence conviction.
I love America. I am so glad that I don't live in this country.
In the video, they explain that the government is betraying white British people.
Yes.
And we need to take back control of our country.
Right. How should Charlie react? Scroll past the content, ignoring the message. Find more about the topic online. Engage directly with the post. This seems... Well, I would look up more about it, right? Obviously, yeah, you should look it up and see if this is true or not. Yeah, I feel like that's smart. You know, find out more. Yeah, you go with B. That's what I would do, of course. Okay?
Charlie wasn't sure if this video was true.
Yeah.
But the recent other encounters made them curious. Charlie went directly to the account's website and found research papers, statistics, information about protests, and more regarding the replacement of white people.
So I want you to keep in mind that what they're saying here is that by researching and looking things up yourself and looking for further information, you will find out that you're radicalized. Sorry, you will become radicalized.
So deluding yourself by thinking, oh, the government's only reading private messages to detect terrorist content is a pretty big cope, given that the government thinks right-wing views about mass migration, which are shared and espoused by literally tens of millions of people in Britain, is literally terrorist content. That's what they think. Of course, they can't lock up millions of people for opposing mass migration. They can't imprison everyone who sends a spicy meme to their WhatsApp group chat. But what they can do is weaponize the mere threat of surveillance alone, to scare people into self-censorship, to chill dissent, to atomize people into thinking their views on mass migration aren't just not shared by their friends and family, but by a huge and growing chunk of the population. Is it gonna work? No, you can't just eliminate the anger at what's provably and manifestly happening in this country by spying on people's DMs.
All right, so that's that.
You know what?
I'll
I'm not usually a great big fan of that guy, but he's absolutely nailed that one. You can't argue with a single word of that. That was absolutely spot on.
Yeah. So before we discuss,
I agree. Yes, I do.
I just want to say, first and foremost, there's been backdoors built into every single computer system, especially Windows, where they could log into your machine while it's on the internet while you're not even aware. That's been possible for a long, long time. And in fact, the governments, including the US government, made sure companies like Microsoft did that. So one of the things that I learned in the early 2000s was that the internet companies can track exactly what you're doing, because every time you type on a keyboard onto a PC, that is registered just from the internet. And that's just like that video was saying, is prior to any message going through the encryption. And as I've said, going back to 2019, as I was kind of highlighting what WhatsApp and Meta have been doing, I've been saying that none of those messages are private, whether it's through DMs or whether it's through groups, because I knew that from what I've read and learned about what goes on in India. India was the first country and the first government to make sure WhatsApp was not private, and ever since then, it's slowly been brought over everywhere else. And it's first they're going to go after their enemies. Like we have Stephen Laws, which is the racist chap that's been doing the rounds on all the other.
Oh, that guy was a psycho. Yeah, like I mean, thing is, guys like him, he doesn't help.
And I said to people, I said to people that once they've got enough of you on board, then they're going to start rolling out and catching people in support of him. And you see, they've already have the system in place, so they're going to be able to kind of go around and arrest people who are saying certain things. And that comes back to my point, what I made earlier. It doesn't matter who you think who's going to come into power and they've said this and they said that, unless they make the right promises and then they guarantee that they will deliver. I bet you any amount of money they will take your votes, and by the time they get into power, they will do a complete U-turn. So there is no coming back from any of this, Britain, unfortunately, unless you really find a leader who's willing to give you a guarantee that they will deliver on their promises. Because all the Nigel Farages, all the Ben Habibs and everybody else, they just will not do it, because like everybody else, they just make a U-turn. Sorry, DC, I cut you off there, mate.
You're okay. So, yeah, I think, like you say, this is already a snowball. We're not going to be able to get in the way of it without getting taken out. It's not going to stop the snowball. And I think what's happened here is the media and the government have realized the power in sharing your opinion online. That's why they want to get rid of X, but they don't want to get rid of TikTok, of course. And then TikTok doesn't get a mention. It's because if I do a really powerful campaign, an emotive, factual campaign, and I say, everybody share this, within a week, it's all over the whole country. Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and England, right? They want the monopoly on that share. The BBC has the monopoly on that share, and Twitter and Facebook, to a certain extent, really puts a dent in that. And that's the reason why the government think people are opposing them. They think if they can shut down the sharing, they can stop people sharing things on X and Facebook, suddenly nobody's organized enough to mount a credible campaign against them.
Well, social media interaction, messages and posting is down somewhere between 20 and 40% from its peak during around 2020, 2021. And if people who spend a lot of time online would have received various questionnaires from the BBC, from Google and various other, including Meta, asking you and WhatsApp, asking you whether you trust them or whether they think they're doing a good thing about privacy. And if you're brave enough, I'm sure you told them the truth, that you don't trust them, and no, we don't think they're doing a good job. And they're doing these questionnaires because they're trying to work out why people are not using their services. So they've killed social media, and even DC Daily COVID here will tell you that there's actually no point doing videos and live streams and things like that these days, because if you have content that is not part of the official narrative, then you could be making the best videos, doing the best live streams or whatever. Your video will not come up in the algorithm because you've been shadow banned. And I can tell you from my own experience that my own YouTube accounts have been unsubscribed from my own channels, and even though the numbers never change. So I look at the messages, I got 5 new or 6 new subscribers this day, 7 new subscribers that day, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, but the actual number of subscribers never change. Right? How is it that the same number of people are leaving as they're coming? But of course, we now know that people are being unsubscribed unknowingly, and they're just robots. A lot of them. Yeah,
I was going to say, you're aware of bot farms and how they pressure and they look to manipulate creators. What they will do, if you say something they like that agrees with them, they'll subscribe and like and share and comment to make you think, right, I need to do more of that content. But then if you do something they don't like, they'll get all those same accounts to unsubscribe, delete all their comments, and write nasty ones. So they're all bot account. They're not real people at the end of those. There's dozens and dozens of them. I think probably a third of my whole subscriber base at one point was bots. But I mean, the only thing you can really do is be very, very resolute in not being manipulated by your audience. Don't be pandering to your audience. And that's what I've done. So what I find is my channel kind of died off a bit. No one really watches my videos on my channel. But if I share to a couple of places on Facebook, those Facebook shares will do incredibly well.
Yeah, sorry, I was just getting this video ready. I didn't mean to interrupt you. So, all right, do you know Hope Not Hate? Do you know about Hope Not Hate?
I do.
Okay. Oh, let's
not a fan.
Days ago, Hope Not Hate finally released a statement about Ron Woodcock Velleman and his involvement in both Hope Not Hate and paedophilia. Let's read out the statement now. On Friday, 2nd of January, Ron Woodcock Velleman pleaded guilty to multiple child sex offences and will be sentenced on 10th of February. Hope Not Hate fully condemn these heinous crimes and believe that he should rightfully be punished under the full force of the law. Woodcock Velleman worked for Hope Not Hate as a junior employee until early 2023. Woodcock Velleman carried out the offences between 3rd December and 10th of December 2024. Hope Not Hate has had no contact with Woodcock Velleman since well before his arrest. The first point I'd like to raise is they've called him a junior employee, and yet he represented them in Parliament as a supposed expert witness and giving Hope Not Hate's views on the online safety bill. I don't believe this sounds like a junior employee. He was paid by Hope Not Hate. He was an employee, I believe, for 3.5 years. I've seen on social media it said he was one of their employees for 3.5 years. Hope Not Hate have been critical of other organisations for having paedophiles in their midst who have been there in unpaid roles, whereas Velleman was paid for 3.5 years. They also say that they have had no contact with him since well before his arrest. We've got no way of either proving or disproving this, but Velleman, as well as working for Hope Not Hate, was well in with the Jewish labour movement, which a lot of Hope Not Hate employees and volunteers are also members of. Obviously, Velleman is only being charged with what he's been arrested for, but somebody doesn't just suddenly decide to become a paedophile. The Ron Velleman probably had these tendencies, whether or not he acted on them, the whole time he was working for Hope Not Hate. People from Hope Not Hate would have been working alongside him almost every day, when people in other organisations, like I said, who've been working in a voluntary role, have turned out to be paedophiles. Most people within that organisation wouldn't have seen them from one week to the next. They wouldn't have been working alongside them every day. Hope Not Hate is quick to slander other people for being associated with people who've later turned out to be paedophiles. But when it happens to them, they release a cop-out statement understating his position within their heinous company. The Ron Woodcock Velleman will be sentenced on the 10th of February, so it'd be interesting to see if he even receives a custodial sentence, or due to the two-tier system and his work in far-left politics, whether he gets a get-out-of-jail-free card. A few days ago...
So there you have it. So we have Hope Not Hate lying again, attacking someone like Tommy Robinson continuously for stopping Muslim grooming gangs, but they had, a paedophile amongst their ranks, and they're lying, saying that he wasn't senior. Well, here he is representing them in a government forum.
Yeah, I think any kind of paid lobbyist group like Hope Not Hate, where they're a commercial structure for organising protests, do you think if there's nothing to really protest about, that they're just going to quit and go home? Or are they going to manufacture protests they can go to in order to keep collecting their salaries? And that's what I think is happening with Hope Not Hate. Plus, I mean, it's interesting that he's called Woodcock Velleman, so he's from an unmarried, a broken marriage or an unmarried couple. That's presumably the reason he's got two surnames. So this is a guy who I can guess wasn't brought up particularly, in an English culture setting or in a good way, now is a paid lobbyist for the left. You couldn't pick a worse guy to leave with your children. And of course, they want to separate from him. So they say, even though he was working for 3.5 years representing us in Parliament, we're not going to have any more contact. No contact is a thing that the left use. But for all we know, they just replaced like for like and just carried on. And that's what a commercial entity would do. So I think that's potentially what we're looking at there. It's just a shame how we can't criticize these people despite this being known. You know, if I share that on Facebook, I'll be shadow banned. No one's going to see that one.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so I want to share something else. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have seen this, mate. So share this tab instead.
Agent Jones leaps from the...
So bear with me, just get through this advert. So this lady is a former survivor of the Epstein nightmare. So this is an interview with Alex Jones.
Realized as I started to wonder who's Epstein's boss, because when you look at the emails, he speaks about the plane and the house. It's not like it's my house and my plane. So I started to look a bit deeper, and I realized I think Bill Gates is the boss. Because why did his wife divorce him over it? And where is he? You know, there's an amazing guy called Eric Weinstein who's done an incredible interview about Epstein. You met him. And we must actually share that with all the viewers. But I think that, you know, there's a lot more going on here, and we've been lied to completely.
Well, I think you just nailed it clearly. Bill Gates' wife left him.
Bill Gates. Yeah, where the fuck is he? Sorry to swear, and I'll pay for every swear word I say for him. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Let's talk about Bill Gates.
I hate him.
From your research,
I hate him.
It looks like that Epstein was a bagman for him and others. Bill Gates wanting to buy off control scientific leadership. Elaborate on why you think Bill Gates was actually one of his bosses.
Well, one of Epstein's assistants told me that Bill Gates was there every week having tea. We all know Bill Gates is very much, you know, his name's been associated, but he's had nothing to say about it. Also, when his wife divorced him over the fact that he was associated with Epstein, that's another red flag right there. Let's ask Melinda Gates what she has to say.
And that's right. She even said in multiple interviews, it's because of Epstein.
Yes. So let's look deeper into Bill Gates. Why has he been so quiet about the whole Epstein story? He's just sort of vanished, right? Conveniently. And also another thing that made me realize that they're after Gates is because the lawyer, David Boies, who was representing me in the lawsuit against Epstein, he actually had a big lawsuit against Bill Gates long ago. And it was like Microsoft versus the US government. And David Boies put Bill Gates on the stand for 12 hours, and David Boies won. You know, they annihilated him. So I'm sure about the lawyers or anyone anymore, okay? But the thing is that I'm realizing that these lawyers were after Bill Gates quite a while ago, and they're clearly after him again.
So I want to pose this to you, DC. Why hasn't Trump arrested Bill Gates and questioned him not only about this Epstein thing, but what he did during COVID? How can that be possible?
Well, I can imagine that there's people considered to be untouchable who nobody's going to arrest because he's never faced any legal penalty, as far as I know, for any of the things that he's done. And everyone who knows anything, who's had their eyes open, knows Bill Gates has been in some extremely, without swearing, flaming excrement projects. You know, he has done a lot of stuff that people will rightly hate his guts for that is criminal here and, you know, in other countries. Well, here in America, I mean, and other countries. So perhaps he's at that level of wealth where even though the law, if he drops a clanger, they'll arrest him straight away. He's not likely to do that, and he has the support network to keep him out of trouble, the same way that Epstein did, the same way that many others do. You know, to a certain extent, the same way that guys like Keir Starmer do, considering his part in the post office scandal that we all know about. So I think it's probably something to do with that. He's just that rich and powerful, knows too many people. To take that guy down would also be taking down your whole government. So that will be a thing to do at the end, if at all.
Okay, so staying on that, let me share a very conspiratorial video.
Volume's off, mate, by the way. Might want to rewind.
Oh, sorry, mate. It's all right. You're not missing much. He's just introducing the video.
Appreciate you guys very, very much. Also, like this video. That's the rule. Once you've subscribed, you have to like every single. I'm just kidding. You don't have to, but it would be very helpful to me, and I would appreciate it. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at Jeffrey Epstein's. Okay, this is Jeffrey Epstein's photo, and this is our lady here, and we're going to take a look at this and how she says, not dead. The dude's not dead. Okay, so check this out.
On a photo that the internet cannot stop arguing about. Because it's just another morbid Monday. Wish it was Friday. I need more lyrics. I got nothing. Hannah, oh my God, my brain is just fucking fried. Morbid Monday. Morbid Monday.
What? Dude, did you not hear me? I'm stealing your content here with the fair use doctrine. I said I don't want F words. Okay? You got 573,000 views on this video, even though you use the F word. I'm confused by that. Whatever. Let's just let it run. Okay? I said no more F words. Stop it. Okay? I know you did this yesterday, but I need you to stop saying F words.
Cue the intro. Wow, 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 wow. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to show you from a mortuary science standpoint why this photo does not show a deceased body. Not opinion, not conspiracy, anatomy, physiology, and what the body actually does after death. Then, once we establish that, we're going to talk about the part that really doesn't sit right with me. It's a little opinionated, but we're going to go there. Why does this photo exist at all? Why?
Because
the lack of publicly released autopsy photos, the absence of clear crime scene imagery, what documentation does and doesn't exist, and what happens after someone like this actually dies. But before we go anywhere else, we need to start with the body. It's raining outside. Alrighty then. Because no matter what you believe about this case, a dead body follows rules. So let me show you exactly how I can tell just by looking at this image that you all lovingly and morbidly tagged me in, that the person, aka Jeffrey Epstein, in this photo is very much alive in this moment, which actually makes the photo weirder to me. Pull the photo up again. I get tagged in this.
So, do you think he looks dead or alive there?
I have absolutely no idea, but I will say this. I've never seen Lauren the Mortician before, but that was not a good start, Lauren. I'm very distrustful of you, just purely and simply on the way that you present and the way that you open your shows. So I'm not a mortician, and I'm not sure a mortician really would be able to qualify that based on a single photo. But do I think Epstein is alive? No, probably not. I don't think so.
No,
I don't know whether he was in
what I didn't ask that. I didn't ask that. Have you ever seen a dead body, DC?
No, not personally, no.
Okay. I've seen a number of dead bodies.
Well, I've seen pictures of dead bodies, but I've never seen a live dead body, and I don't have experience with death in that way.
I have a number of them. So this is what she is saying. I can understand, because when you look at a deceased person, they don't look like they are asleep.
Yeah, he does. Look at his eyes. His eyes look like he's actually awake and just shutting his eyes. Yeah, there's tension in those eyelids there.
And that's her point. But she's going to go in a bit more detail, and it's interesting. But I just wanted to get your view, if you thought visually from this photograph whether he looked as if he had moved on or not. But let's continue.
Well, he must have been only dead for a matter of minutes. He must have been only dead for like a few minutes or something, if he is dead here. But I mean, you can tell he's tension. There's tension in those muscles on his eyelids.
Exactly.
Does this look like a dead body to you? And that's when I realized why this photo is so effective and honestly dangerous, because it sits right in that uncomfortable middle space. Close enough to death to confuse people, or at least it's cosplaying death, but not close enough to actually be real.
Yeah. It's all. Oh, let me get her off that. Sorry.
So instead of
It's almost like they planned it and there were conspirators to help fake his death. Are you serious, Jesse? Of course, dude.
And I asked one question, which if you ever see something like this again, I hope that this video comes to mind, because you should be thinking, what is the body telling me? So when I saw this, the very first thing I noticed wasn't the weird looking table he's lying on. It wasn't his body positioning. It was actually the mouth area, his mouth. This is one of those things that families are always kind of shocked by, because no one really talks about it. But when someone dies, every muscle in their body relaxes. All of it, including your jaw. And when the jaw relaxes and someone is lying on their back, gravity takes over and the mouth opens. Not dramatically, just naturally. So naturally, in fact, that at the funeral home, we don't just hope the mouth stays closed. We actually have to physically close it. And we have a few different techniques on how to do that, but we'll have to talk about that in another video. That's not poetic. That's not optional. That's anatomy. There are techniques for it, because
so that's the gist of it there, mate. What are your thoughts listening to that?
Yeah, I think clearly, if you're asking me, unqualified, unwashed peasant knows nothing about dead people. When you heard me say it, that guy looks like he's forcibly looking asleep. His eyelids are tense. His face is tense. It looks like he's got one hand behind his head, like you would lounge in a deck chair or something like that. So it's a very odd photo. But I mean, the guy would have been seen if he'd been alive. And, just because there's no body, I think that's probably, if you wanted to kill someone and get away with it, you hide the body, don't you? You hide the weapon, make sure there's no evidence. So that on its own is suspicious, but I don't think it's enough to say, it's not enough to fuel an entire conspiracy. You need more than that, in my view.
Okay, so before I close the show down, I've got a gift for you, DC. You ready for it?
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, just get through this advert.
I thought that would be good.
Why did Charlie think he was a time traveler? He said, as I showed you in earlier messages, that he was a time traveler and he had to find me. Is that just something people are saying to their homies in text messages? And again, not anything that I would have placed so much emphasis on back when he was saying it, but it came to fruition. The other parts, he did die young. Why did he think that him dying young was necessary in order to change things? He did die young. It is related to Turning Point USA. In some way or another, at the very least, we can all agree it's related to him speaking at a campus event for Turning Point USA. I'm totally occupied by this. I tell you, I read these messages and I'm going, what is this? What is reality, actually? And Charlie died. Yes, like I said, it was related to this organization. And I think we would all agree that his death and the manner that they did it changed the world in ways that I don't think we can fully realize, or certainly not in a way that I can articulate. You just cannot pretend that all of this is one big unhappy coincidence. It's entirely plausible, I think plausible, that they knew something about Charlie. And that's why they had him marked and had him monitored and had him likely followed since he was young. And maybe they thought, like the agents think, that if they swarmed him and they stayed with him and they pretended to be his friend, that ultimately they could control Charlie and perhaps change an outcome. They could literally change an outcome related to Charlie. So when for the first time in his life, because I do believe he was managed, I mean, I've already said I was handled. I didn't recognize that I had agents. And for the first time in his life, Charlie peeks his head up and starts to push back in a meaningful way. They couldn't stop him from becoming bigger. That seemed to be inevitable. But they panicked. They seem to have panicked, right? I mean, this is just starting to happen within a year when Charlie's going like, hey, man, I don't actually think this. I don't actually believe this. And then he goes, you know what? Take the money. Take the money out of the organization. And they panicked. They freaked out. And their solution was, no, just kill him. Just kill him. We can't have this.
I'm going to say this. I challenge her to do a drug test. I will do one with her. We'll find nothing but nicotine and alcohol. and very little alcohol, a lot of nicotine. Candace, I want to say it, watching that, you can't fake crazy. That looks like Adderall-fueled schizophrenia to me.
Yeah, well, it's clearly some form of psychosis. That was my first thought, is like, you almost can't even blame her. Like, this is literally just psychosis at this point. You can see it in her eyes. You could see it in those, like, she is totally sincere. She's totally authentic. She believes in what she's saying. And it's the craziest stuff I've ever heard.
And that I thought I was from another planet, that I was an alien my entire life. Just do not get it here. This planet is ghetto. That's how I feel. I don't understand it. The rules don't make sense. I think that's also why I like cats so much. I feel that they can relate to that. They think humanity is ghetto. They don't want to be around us. They don't like us. They know it's ghetto. It is ghetto here, right?
All right, DC, over to you, mate. That's a little present. Why don't you unload?
That was funny. So yeah, I don't know quite where to start with that. That was a lot of waffling kind of conspiratorial language, but I try and put out bullet points. What's her bullet points there? Her bullet points is she thinks that Charlie Kirk was a time traveler who had agents manipulating him from a young age, and she did too, but she didn't notice. And the reason why they killed him, even though we don't know who they is because of money. He was going to take his money out of his company, and that was not okay with them. But I've got to say, I just cannot bring myself to trust any of that. Like, there's no clear facts pathway, you know? There's no clear evidence. And I still have in the back of my mind, Candice, how are you alive? You told me you were going to be assassinated and it had been paid for and executed upon, and that the French official who worked in the office was now going to be under fire as well for letting the cat out of the bag. How are you still alive, Candace? No, you're not dead. You should be dead by now, surely. And then my closing statement: I have been in contact with a secret member of the Candice podcast, and I have deemed her information to be accurate, to say that Candice is actually implicated in Charlie Kirk's murder. And because I've told you this now, I'm going to be assassinated in 2 weeks. God bless the person from her office that called me. I've got evidence, but you can't see it.
My issue with that video isn't Candice. Everybody has an opinion about Candice, but I must admit some of the very, very latest one or two things that she said are a bit crazy. My issue is with Alex Jones. I expected more from Alex Jones than what he's portraying of late. There's a few very, very suspicious things that he's saying and doing at the moment, Alex Jones. And first and foremost, I know people who have experienced schizophrenia and be through psychosis. I can tell you categorically, Candice is not going through that, or has not gone.
Yeah, I think absolutely, I would agree there. I don't think. I mean, the thing is, she's now set up. She's now set up. If she goes to this Macron court case, or if anything else comes out, she can now start bashing packets full of Adderall and then say she's having a psychosis. So it's kind of given her a leg to stand on to not be punished for these things in future. So I think actually it's counterproductive to what Alex Jones would have wanted.
Yeah.
But he's
got that racist little weasel. He's got that racist little weasels sitting with him, talking load of baloney. I'm not a big fan of Nick Fuentes, and
I'm not. I've never watched the guy. I've just heard bad things, and you know the rare statements that I read of his, I always disagree. So I'm not a big fan of his. But I do think, like Alex Jones, with the whole drug test duel. I mean, the gauntlet's thrown down now. He said, right, let's both go for a drug test. And it will have to be in the next week or two. You know, you can't leave it 3 months because drugs will run out of your system. If she wants to prove that she's not crazy and drugged up to the eyeballs, here's your opportunity. It's exactly the same as before. When I said to her, why don't you challenge Macron in a live stream or one of his people to come and be, candid about these things? But she didn't go for it. I don't think she'll go for this one.
Yeah, Alex Jones, I'm sure, smokes a few things here and there as well. He doesn't, or certainly has a.
Well, according to him, he doesn't. According to him, he just smokes nicotine and has the odd beer. So,
on that note, young man, I am now going to have some dinner and stuff. What's your plan for the rest of the evening?
probably just finish off what I was doing previously, eat some bacon sarnies, and read my Bible.
Well, that makes,
Quite
if you're going to eat bacon sarnies, then we can take away from that you are definitely not a terrorist.
Yes, my anti-terrorist genetics dictate that I must eat bacon every day.
Mate, thank you so much for jumping on. Really appreciate it.
No worries, Manny. It was lovely to be here. God bless you all. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one.
See you.
Bye
All right, guys, there's no video to be played out. It's just a simple goodbye. I'll catch you soon.